Welcome back to another episode of Equality Sucks. I'm Bernard Marks, and I'm here with co-host.
Corbin Dallas.
Thank you, Corbin. It's a wonderful name to be using for such a program. Hopefully, some listeners will know where it's from.
My application for the multi-pass is in the mail.
Yeah, it's going to be one of those. So for this episode, we were sort of debating for a while what we wanted to discuss, and we decided, it's not going to be specifically this aspect of it. We want to discuss college campuses and the culture more generally. But a specific question that I had, because I was doing some research and I was looking at the protests that are going on today, and I was comparing it to the activity, specifically Weather Underground in the 60s and the 70s, and I noticed how much uglier today's protesters are when compared to those of the 60s and the 70s.
I think we just have like a lot more camera phones and shit, you know? Like we're able to get a nice clear picture of what's happening here. I mean, yeah, no, not to say that there weren't plenty of pictures being taken in the 60s or whatever.
Just grainy black and white ones from the FBI.
Yeah, exactly, you know, like looking their best in their yearbook photo, but like 3 years after that yearbook photo.
That little 60s comb to the side that they had with the
everything was
with the hair.
Exactly, corn-fed in Idaho, but then they went to college, you know?
Yeah.
And,
no, but I didn't even think about that aspect of it. Just the culture today of camera phones and everyone being able to take a picture all the time, specifically in relation to how ugly today's protesters are. Right. So, do you think that there were just as many ugly protesters in the '60s, or
I kind of think that today ugly is a badge of merit because it's another form of being a victim. You know, like what are these beauty standards of society that we have today? Yeah. You know, like why should I conform to this beauty standard? I'm ugly. I'm a victim, and like I'm ugly and proud of it. Sort of.
That's an interesting point because you never really think about the fact that ugly can be its own sort of civil rights movement. I mean, in the 60s and the 70s, sort of like that unshaven, having the long hair, the long beard, not bathing, that was sort of like the rock star look, which is what it still is today. That is sort of considered the rock star look.
I bathe.
Yeah, well, I do on occasion, but I'm married, so I have less to impress. But in the 60s, it was sort of like going for that rock star look, you know? And today, that sort of look is considered attractive because it's known as the rock star look. You know, is he hot or is he homeless? But like you said, being ugly for a social justice warrior is like a badge.
It's not, I don't think it's something that, like, if you were to, ask them in a moment of privacy whether or not they'd continue being an ugly duckling or, just what they imagine society is and have everything they want because they're beautiful. If you were to ask them that in complete isolation, they might tell you one thing and tell you something else, to kind of prolong their victimology. But it's not just about being ugly. I mean, that's part of it. I mean, listen, a lot of the people that happen to be successful or not successful, I don't want to say successful, but, people that, like, kind of propagate themselves. And I'm not, trying to get into, like, this weird, propagation of genetics, conversation.
Uh-oh.
Yeah, no, I'm not. That's
I'm hearing some words here which you Margaret, a little cautious.
I'm not about Margaret Sanger and shit. No, I'm not
some eugenics bullshit. I don't want to get into that tricky territory.
But what I'm saying is that people who generally, and dude, you can be ugly and still take care of yourself, and people who take care of themselves generally are doing it for a reason. They're generally looking for a mate. And they're generally looking to procreate and have offspring. And those are the people that we call normies. And normies are not good.
But on a college campus, just to sort of get back to the main topic, the broader topic that we wanted to talk about. I mean, obviously, this isn't anything new, the protests.
No.
I mean, we've seen that all before.
And it's been worse.
Yeah, it has been worse. I mean, people forget. We have a terrorism issue today, but there was a significant terrorism issue in the 70s, and it wasn't
hostage crisis.
Yeah, and it was a terrorist issue. I mean, you want to talk about white privilege? That was the terrorism. It was white privilege.
Right.
When you look at the bombings of the government buildings and government offices, it was conducted by middle class and upper middle class white people.
If you wanted to call somebody the intelligentsia, it was going to be the white guys. If you wanted to call somebody the soldiers, it was going to be the Panthers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But today, it sort of seems like it's flipped around a little bit. I mean, I guess the main thing that I want to uncover and understand is college is supposed to be a center for education.
So, according to who?
Just based in its own definition. You
No,
look,
but
you
what-
look at a
who made
dictionary.
that definition?
Yeah, but you look at I mean, it's a school. You look at a dictionary
But
definition.
who wrote that dictionary definition?
So what are you saying?
I'm
Chris?
saying that what we define as what a school should be, I'm playing devil's advocate.
Yeah.
I'm saying what they're saying the definition of school is some weird social construct came up with hundreds of years ago that has no fit for society in 2017. And what they think, what the general acceptance of what school is, academia, going to a college campus and debating and not having safe spaces, being exposed to extremely unsafe ideas, that's something that these people today don't think actually should be. That's a definition of something some white dude came up with 450 fucking years ago. That's not what it should be. And they have a different definition of what it is. And they're working very hard, and they're achieving their goals and changing it.
In changing what education
And
should
changing what academia is, and changing speech, and changing the diversification of ideology. Like, it's a rough situation. It's a rough situation where you go from, let's say you have, and I've heard this before. I can't source it. I forget. It's probably on some other podcast. But let's say you have like 40% conservative and 60% liberals. The space in academia is such, it's formulated in such a way where that snowballs from 60-40 to like 90-10 in the matter of
How about this
years.
for our listeners to be able to sort of put it in the real world perspective? Let's use the example of Evergreen College.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of what happened there, just to sort of do a recap, there was generally a once a year situation where the black students would not participate in school activities for a day.
Right.
It was a day of absence.
Mm-hmm.
What happened was they decided to do the opposite voluntarily. Yes.
Yeah.
Then they decided to do a day where everyone else was forced to not be on campus, and it was said it was supposed to be voluntary, but anyone who didn't participate was harassed.
I'm not like, and I'm sorry because I probably
That's just I'm sorry. That's just to sort of recap what happened, and this resulted in sort of students taking over the college campus, harassing teachers, harassing the faculty, for not willfully leaving campus when they were told to. Specifically, white faculty and white students who didn't leave campus.
Right.
All right.
I mean, I'm not one like I know in passing the situation over there. I have a faint understanding. I don't know if they were asking the white professors to stay home or demanding the white professors stay home.
Well, either way, it doesn't matter.
Yeah,
even if they were just asking,
exactly.
the way they reacted to when
No,
professors didn't.
Exactly. That's the whole point. They could have asked him. He could have said no. They could have asked him. He could have said no. And at the end of the day, they're the guys that are hunting his ass down, looking for what car is parked in the parking lot. You know, him having to relocate his family because he said no. He disagreed. And here's the problem with where we are in campuses and academia. It is no longer the place of challenging ideas, exchanging ideas, debates. I don't know if it has anything to do with intellectual laziness, the fact that they're not able to debate ideas, or maybe I don't know where it's coming from.
Well,
or
listen,
is it just easier to just shut them down? Like where does it come from?
That's sort of where we're seeing college campuses now. I mean, it's not just Evergreen, but that's the examples we're seeing. Things along those lines. I mean, we were able to have the opportunity to attend college together for a few years.
Right.
We went to Stony Brook University out in Long Island in New York.
State University of New York.
Yeah. We went to Stony Brook, and I remember even back then, there was already inklings of subjects being taught that didn't really feel. I mean, it was basically like philosophical subjects. And I remember you were taking a gender studies class, which was required for you to take.
How can we forget, right?
Yeah, and I remember you invited me to go along, obviously to laugh at the curriculum, because there's nothing more hilarious
Or at least believe me that it actually existed.
Yeah, that is true. I wasn't told because the way you were describing it, where they were discussing if Barbie had a penis or something. I don't remember exactly, but I did find it hilarious. And of course, I smoked a lot of weed in those days.
Yeah.
So there's nothing funnier than a joint, and then these. I mean, now we get to see them quite often. What do you call them? Transgenders?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's what they call themselves now.
Yeah. So I remember this gender studies class. You invited me to go along, and I remember how seriously, and this was a fairly large class. This was a fairly large class, at least 100 students. How seriously everyone was taking it, and I was stoned out of my mind, and I couldn't believe how seriously all these students were taking it. I mean, it sounded ridiculous, and I knew for a fact, like, how many of them were actually transgender. Visibly, I could only see one, and she also happened to have the answer to every question.
Yeah, she got.
I mean, you want to talk about a teacher's pet, you
Right.
know?
I think she knew more than a teacher.
Yeah.
I remember that. I remember that. It was a good place for me to.
But the reason why I bring it up, what was our reaction to the class? Do you not remember?
It was kind of disbelief. I was more upset with the fact that, and this actually like kind of ties into a previous.
And by the way, just to bring this into perspective, this was a good 10 years ago.
Yeah. This was a while ago. It's not like campuses were vast.
No,
Vast
kids were still playing hacky sack, trying to finger fuck each other.
Yeah, that was happening too. But it's campuses have been leftward for a while.
Yeah.
But the number one thing that kind of crossed my mind, and it kind of goes back to like one of your previous episodes, is things that like I understand the importance of money involved in the actual institution taking over a lot of the actual institution. So, for example, like in your previous episode, the media, there has to be a balance between running a business and running an actual product of journalistic integrity. There has to be the balance.
You're talking, I just want to interrupt just to sort of clarify, the fact that college institutions are a business.
That's where I'm getting at.
Yeah.
And so like, that's exactly the point I'm trying to make. There has to be a balance between, I understand that universities cost money. These professors and Hillary Clinton speeches cost $250,000 a pop. I understand that, maybe.
By the way, I'm sorry to interrupt. You mentioned Hillary Clinton, and that just threw a fork into my entire theory about today's protesters being uglier than before, because I've seen her student pictures.
Indeed.
I've seen her student pictures.
Yeah, that's true.
And Bill Clinton is a charming fella.
Yeah.
So.
Can you imagine her taking a selfie, taking a shit like Lena Dunham?
Yeah, that's okay. So there's my fork. So you're right. You're absolutely right. I apologize. I retract all previous statements. They were pretty fucking ugly, circa 1967 as well.
There have always been a certain segment of the population. Let's say.
Yes. Yeah. I don't want to sound sexist, but some makeup's not a bad idea.
Yeah, a little bit sometimes.
And it's not sexist because as a dude, I need to groom, I need to shave, I need to do stuff like that. So.
But listen, man, there's you could put lipstick on a pig like Nancy Pelosi and.
We're taking a silent pause just to let it sink.
Just let everybody Google Nancy Pelosi.
I just gotta say, I love pigs, and I think it's disrespectful and disgusting how you referred to Nancy Pelosi as a pig because you're doing a disservice.
I apologize.
A disservice.
I've offended all
disservice.
All pigs.
If pigs look like Nancy Pelosi, a lot more people would be kosher. Believe you me.
Islam, not a bad idea.
Yeah, they don't need pigs either, right?
Yeah, it's haram.
They just... So anyway.
But the point is that colleges also need to be able to have that balance. And I think what's happening is that...
Yeah, good trying to segue that one back into college campuses. Pig fucking Nancy Pelosi and Hillary Clinton.
It's really not that big of a stretch.
Yeah, you got me there.
To be quite honest. But colleges need that balance. And what's happening right now is that colleges have a conveyor belt of non-stop incoming students that are getting subsidized either through federal government loans or a loan from a private bank that's just like, fuck it, let's just, make the... I mean, look, the bet has always been, let's throw loan money behind these kids so when they graduate, they're able to get a higher paying job with a higher tax base and are able to actually pay us. Let's do that. That's the bet. The bet was that the fact that these kids are getting 4-year degrees or master's or doctorate degrees means that they're going to be able to pay back these student loans, and the government's happy about it because once these student loans get paid back, the tax revenue of somebody who's, let's say, a lawyer or a doctor or an engineer is somebody much higher than somebody who potentially went to technical school. That was their thought. That was their gamble.
Here's what I'm seeing. I'm seeing students studying subjects that I'll believe that they're legitimately passionate in. We're talking about these philosophical sort of gender studies topics, art history, all that. I believe these students are passionately in love with these subjects.
And why not have like an idea about it? You should like have some kind of.
I'm not even saying that people are allowed to have their passions. I know I have mine. I know what I do for a living. I know the field that I'm in, the entertainment industry, production, film production, stuff like that. That's what I do, and I'm fortunate enough to be able to have an income with that profession and support my family. But I also knew, just because I loved that profession, that industry, just because I loved that field, just because I studied that field to no end, didn't guarantee an income. The only thing that would guarantee an income was me getting paid. And that's what I'm seeing is the problem. Students are taking classes that they're in love with, and colleges create these opportunities for students to study subjects that they can fall in love with. And they should, because people need to broaden their horizons. They need to experiment with their brain in terms of education and information. And you know what? If someone does want to make a profession out of art history, they should have a right to. This is America.
100%.
But the problem is they're not putting it on themselves to make an income from it.
And here's the problem with things like big governments and bureaucracies and colleges is that there is no accountability. They get their revenue no matter what. The government gets their IRS tax revenue no matter whether they go over budget, under budget, spend on stupid shit. They get their money no matter what. Somebody like a college is going to get their money no matter what. Oh, I'm sorry, you got your art degree and you weren't able to land your job to be able to pay back your student loans. Fuck you, pay me. Like, that's just how that shit works. There's no accountability. You know what would happen? If something happened in colleges where it's just like, you know what? All these graduates aren't getting jobs. How about we stop paying the administrators of our schools until they start getting work? How about that? Would that maybe actually force administrators to put out a product that helps train people for actual jobs? Maybe. Who the fuck knows? There's no accountability. There's no accountability in anything. And anytime there's no accountability, look at government procurement contracts for the military. We're spending hundreds of billions of dollars on planes that are fucking even not airworthy. Like, they can't even fly. They can't do anything. We have a new aircraft carrier that we're going to build one of, and then we're going to start recommissioning aircraft carriers from 30 years ago because the one that we want to build is too expensive. You know, the procure, like, there's no, and who got fired for that?
I don't know, but was he ugly?
No. What he did was he didn't get fired. It just, you know, it goes straight from, you know, admiral right into the board membership of Boeing or, you know, Lockheed Martin or Newport Shipbuilding Yards or whatever the fuck it is. That's how it is, man. And there's no accountability. The money gets spent.
It's clearly all about just money getting spent.
Check out schools. Check out public schools.
Yeah,
where's the product? How much money are we paying for this product, and what are we getting from it?
Yeah, no, I definitely hear what you're saying, and I can't say I disagree with you. That money is definitely a big issue here, but living within a capitalist system, what are the solutions? I mean, I don't want to look at it, because obviously people are seeing a flawed system, and they're immediately jumping to another system as a solution, that being socialism.
Yeah.
Now, without jumping ship to a system that has proven time and time again to be horrifically dangerous. Genocidally dangerous.
Of deaths.
What exists within the scope of the capitalist system that can sort of help fix this problem?
It's truly a philosophical question, where one philosophically values the intrinsic individuality and natural law of rights given to man, and the other ideology values the collective, doesn't value the individual. You know, you can go to Cambodia, you can go to China and ask him out to sacrifice 20 million people, and he'll tell you that there's 60 million more where that came from. You know, it's just two separate ideologies. And if you look at something, for example, you're talking about reforming capitalism. You could reform. There's reform. And there's the difference between reform and destruction and annihilation. Obamacare. You could reform the United States healthcare system. There are things you could do. You could do tort reform. You could do across state border insurance exchanges. You could do tons and tons of things that reduce their. You know how much malpractice insurance costs for doctors? Why do you think everything is so expensive? You know how much abuse there are in pharmaceutical companies asking for outrageous sums for research and development? There are things that you could do to reform the system. Obamacare didn't reform the system. Obamacare is a stepping stone that's meant to fail in order to get a single payer system. That's all it is. It's supposed to fail. It doesn't matter who it is, the Democrats or the Republicans. We're heading towards a single payer system, and that's where we're at. That's the issue. It's you have to reform. You can't just totally deconstruct and reconstruct, and we have a pretty fucking good healthcare system. I don't know about you, but I see motherfuckers coming in from all kinds of countries getting treatment at Sloan Catering and all these kinds of places and shit. Nobody's flying to fucking Venezuela for treatment. I promise you that shit.
I sort of just want to hear, I mean, capitalism is a flawed system. Yeah. We all know it.
Well,
nature is flawed.
Well, humans are flawed.
Humans are nature. But my question is,
and that's by the way, sorry to interrupt you. The number one thing that you'll ever have to learn, if you ever decide to kind of get into any kind of political ideology or any kind of philosophy or human psychology or any of that, the number one thing that you have to recognize is that human beings are flawed and cannot be perfected. They cannot be perfected. You cannot create perfect human being. They're flawed from birth through death. And the best thing that you can do, why the reason capitalism and free markets and free market division of labor is the best system we have so far, is because it takes advantage. It takes advantage of human failings. I could also go from that tangent off into religion and why religion exists for the same exact reason. Humans are flawed.
Well, my theory is that politics sort of supplanted religion. And that's something I talk about regularly.
Absolutely.
It's politics has definitely supplanted religion,
Absolutely.
And everyone keeps looking for the Messiah through the next candidate.
But that all has to do with the fact that human beings are flawed. Some people try to perfect human beings. You know who those people are? Stalin, Mao, Pol Pot,
drug dealers,
Castro. Drug dealers are trying to just make money out perfecting people.
Well, listen, why can't you, solve a crossword puzzle and make some money at the same time?
That's true. Listen, I have, I'll put it right there. I'll just leave it right there.
Invalidating your point entirely. But that's trying to. I'm not just randomly talking about drugs. I obviously have a greater plan here, and that's to sort of bring together the fact that you went to college. Your college experience was smoke some joints, read some books,
amongst other things.
Go to class. It wasn't too eventful.
No.
But at any point, did you have the urge? And without getting into anything too long, just a simple answer. Did you ever have an urge to sort of go out and protest something? And I'm sure there were ideas and thoughts that you disagreed with very passionately. Obviously, anyone who's been listening to you knows that. But has there been any time that you had the urge to go out and protest anything?
If I'll be honest with you, I have a hard time remembering a lot of things in college, but one thing I will say is that I definitely never had the urge to go and protest anything.
So why do you think, and I always try to look at it from other people's perspective also, so I don't want to entirely discredit even the people I disagree with to such an amount, such as protesters, and even the violent protesters. So they're obviously as passionate about their ideas as we are. Just because they're acting out on it in a different way, I don't want to say that they're necessarily more passionate about it. But what is it, do you think, that drives them to act out the way they do?
I think culture is playing a much larger role than it used to. And not to say that culture didn't play a large role back in the day. Of course it did. But I'm also talking about culture in the age of mass media, in the age of pulling, a device out of your pocket and and having the entire world's information at your fingertips. I think 70 years from now, they're going to be historians, and I've told you about this before. I feel like they're going to be looking at this dawn of our internet age from like the late 90s into like, around now into 2020-ish as one of the most interesting, fascinating sociological experiences of human history, where the world has increased in population but decreased in so many more different facets. And the changes that are going to happen are we still can't really imagine it.
But I mean, you can sort of say the same thing about 1950s America and post World War II America in the late 40s, where it's sort of there was prosperity. You know, like the communities built communities like Levittown in Long Island, where the middle class boomed because people were able to afford a much better quality of living. But at the same time, that's also marks the point where we start seeing a decline in production, in quality of production. So it's sort of like an oxymoron.
Well, let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question. In the 50s, when we started seeing these booms of like these suburban towns, like Levittown, for example, Long Island. Yeah. This was legislation passed in the U.S. government that was essentially trying to provide veterans of World War II with the domiciles, with homes.
Yeah.
Okay, do you think something like that would happen today?
No. I think the closest we got was to Trump talking about veterans.
And I'll be fair with you, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but as of January 30th, 2017, when this is taking place, the Veterans Administration is looking better than it did under Obama, apparently.
Yeah, but the fact is, just because it's looking better, you have to also look at where it was
garbage,
before.
Yeah, it's still garbage. Right.
Yeah, it could have been looking better no matter what, only because it became so publicized, someone had to step in.
And by the way, no matter how shitty it looks, and it looks fucking shitty, what do you think single payer healthcare system is going to look like? Identical.
But the way I look at it, and you bring up a good point, because at that time they were trying to help the veterans.
And the country was united.
But forget about that. There was a draft.
There was a draft.
There was a draft.
Yeah.
They were helping soldiers when it wasn't an incentive to get people to enlist. Absolutely. This was just good faith.
Well, let's also.
But right now, that doesn't even exist, and we don't have a draft system.
Right.
There's no incentive.
Everybody's not in it together, specific per se.
No, I'm just saying there's less of an incentive.
Yeah, because everybody's not in it for, like everybody would be like, yeah, I want a house if everybody was drafted.
But it's not about it's not about forget about draft. Like if veterans were taken care of in a way where you could get a house where you could, they do have benefits.
Yeah, they have
it's not what it should be. But they do have benefits. But if it was much greater, you'd see people going into the military knowing that when they come out, they can come out comfortably in the middle class.
But that's honestly that's a portion of it, man. There are other reasons for people to not want to get into the military. Like the flight hours for our U.S. Air Force is so way down. Our Navy is the size of World War I Navy. Our rules of engagement, I don't know if Trump's changing them. He has the ability as the executive. But our rules of engagement were, you don't shoot until you get fucking shot in the face. That's when you start shooting. Those are other reasons for people to not join the military. Once you get out of the military, you also become a bum. That sucks, and you're fucking and you're depressed and shit. You can't get the medication you need. You can't do any of that. That sucks afterwards. But if you get through the fucking tour alive because you're being underfunded or your rules of engagement are fucked, that's a different story altogether.
You just mentioned two topics I love, and that's bums and people getting shot in the face. And I think it's something we should pencil in for the next time we have a chance to sit down and chat. This was a great time. I speak with you almost every day, and we discuss these things every day. But it's not so often we have a chance to discuss it in a way knowing people are going to be listening and sort of picking at the opinions that we're throwing out there.
Yeah.
So you didn't get too insulting. You tried to keep it. Maybe next time you'll shed another layer of that onion. And call. call some people out
Yeah, well, listen.
on some despicable things.
Hopefully, people don't take anything we say for word value and actually try to research some of this shit. That's like the most important thing.
Well, yeah, obviously. I mean, regardless, this is a piece of entertainment, and it's not to downplay it. It's just to sort of say, if you heard anything interesting, you should go out and research it, because that's the way we act.
And if you think we're wrong, man, I'd like you to disagree so I can
We're
respond
wrong
to
on a lot of stuff. I just spent about an hour calling people ugly, and other people attractive. Listen, Weather Underground, they were despicable human beings, but they had some cute chicks over there, It would be nice if, I turn on the news right now and they say some sort of college campus was taken over by a group of students, and they didn't all have, like, half of their heads shaved, the other half dyed pink, and like rhinoceros horns through their nose.
Well, they can't get too ugly because, most of their male membership is there just to fuck them.
Yeah, but they're not even men anymore. Mm-hmm. Now you're sucking me into a whole nother thing, and I'm going to leave that for another time. So, thank you very much for listening, and we'll check back in with you next time.
Peace out, guys.
So long.